Waters, the one and only Dog Waters, also known as James Williams, or should I do it the other way? Should it be like James Williams, also known as Dog Waters, or should it just be Dog Waters? I don't know. It doesn't matter at this point in time. You guys know exactly who in the hell I am, and I'm back with another episode. And tonight we are talking about Bigfoot, the big hairy monster in the woods, the woodsman, the booger, the swamp thing, all kinds of names for this creature. I mean, I just recently got a phenomenal Bigfoot encounter where this guy, when he was in high school, had one trying to pull him out of his Ford F-150. And we're going to be rolling out some Bigfoot content here on YouTube really, really soon. Right now, we've been trapped in Dogman and hitting Dogman, but Bigfoot weekend is coming up soon. I'm not going to say exactly when, because every time I do stuff like that, people want to steal or they want to piggyback. Oh, Dark Water's doing this, I'm going to do it too. No, I'm not telling you nothing. It's just going to hit you like a ton of bricks. With that being said, I have my guest tonight, Mark Zaskey, on with me from Crypto Reality. Now, I've known about Mark for a long time. I remember when he hit the scene years ago. I remember a YouTube channel popping up, it blowing up, and then for whatever reason, maybe I stopped paying attention. I don't know what was going on, but then he disappeared. And then I saw him with Cariano, and they were talking about their most recent project and their documentary. So I had an opportunity to take a look at some of it. I wanted to get him on as quickly as possible so we can talk about it and so he can go over some things. With that being said, Mark, how are you doing this evening? How is life treating you, my friend?
Life's treating me good. I want to thank you for having me on, and it's a pleasure, man. It's an honor.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. Kerry speaks very highly of you, brother. He speaks extremely highly of you. Kerry is a really cool dude. Like, behind the scenes in this industry, man, people are finicky and funny. Like, the public personalities don't always match what happens in private. And what I like about Kerry is he's the same guy publicly as he is privately. He's a cool dude. And he speaks extremely highly of you. Now, we got all the niceties out of the way. Let's jump into the dark waters and get in down and get our hands dirty. Mark, let's walk through some things. All right, you've been in this field for a long time, and I like to ask people these questions. Can you take me back, like hit rewind on your life for me, right? And take me back to how you first became interested in this topic of Bigfoot, or just the topic of cryptids in general. I don't want to box you in because you may be interested in more and I don't know about it. But how did you get interested in this subject?
Well, we used to camp in Grayling, Michigan when I was a kid, and when I was about 6 years old, we were hiking on the side of a really large highway. Is what I remember. It was just like a 4-lane, 8-lane highway. It was like four on each side, and we came up on about an 18-inch track that was in some sand, and it was like on the side of this road on this trail, and it didn't match anything that was on the trail that we'd seen so far, and it was like really the only thing I'd ever seen anything at that, when I was really young was on the TV recently. At that time, I had seen a news broadcast showing tracks that were similar, and so right then it was like, whoa, is this really what this is? I mean, we didn't know what to think, but in hindsight now, I realize, we probably found a legitimate track, and that really is where I had an interest from that point on. Anything information that came up, I was looking at it.
So you got bit by the bug. You literally got bit by the Bigfoot bug.
Yeah, yeah. I had uncles that hunted in Upper PA in some really deep stuff, and they used to tell me stories. And then of course, when we moved to Florida, it all became reality. The first week I was in Florida, there were reports on the street that I lived on of a horse 2 ranches down from ours that was being attacked by a huge hairy gray monster. And so the whole neighborhood was, and this is going back 1981, 1980, 1981. And so it was suddenly not just on television anymore or in Michigan. It was in the neighborhood and in the woods behind our house. And so it became a reality in 1981 for me.
I tell you what, let's stay back there in the 1980s because this is going to be an interesting question. So you've been dealing with this and being aware of this since the 1980s. Give me a juxtaposition as to how you see the topic of Bigfoot and the hairy ape from people perceiving it in the 1980s till now. Like, because you've seen it all then. You've been involved in this for a very long time. How has it changed or how has it not changed?
Well, I think that largely from 1980 till now, the general public's opinion hasn't changed an iota. There's still question marks on the most obviously explained aspects of the subject, and I think that, you know, locally in the 1980s, this was just kind of like an accepted part of the reality of living here. I think it was the second or third week that I was in Florida. It was all over the news and in the newspapers that two Lake Worth police officers had gotten divorced at the same time, ironically, and then ended up moving into a piece of property. These two police officers, and they had them on their property, and they were essentially trying to bag one of them in Western Lake Worth, which is, was just down the street from my house, and really the forest was connected to it. So we were in this, and the general consensus back then, because people had been around these things in all of this development through the 1970s into the 1980s, was that they were a part of the world, and that's just what it is. It's the outside opinions that came in through television that really introduced the confusion to what's going on. If you still to this day go into these small rural communities and you get to know people, they talk about the creatures as if they're real and they understand fully that they're real. It's this national campaign of what we choose to call it is disinformation that will afford the general public alternative opinions and alternative perspectives on a subject that, like I said, locally since the 1980s, this really hasn't changed. If you go into those rural communities and the creatures are still in these areas, if they're still in those areas, the people that live in these communities to this day understand that these creatures live here and they're real. They watch shows like we do, only they watch it like my wife and I do. They understand what's really going on and that the truth isn't being covered.
Now I'm gonna ask you two questions. One is a question out of ignorance, so forgive me. You use the term "we" when you talk about crypto reality, so I'm assuming it's you and your wife that are involved in your project, right? You guys live together. She's probably seen what you've seen, so she's
Yeah.
100% on board with supporting you on this.
Yes, my wife leads the charge on the humanitarian side of this, and that Sasquatch are the true Aboriginals of North America, and there's not a tribe that would disagree with the fact that they were here when they got here. And so we have for 8 years been focused on the importance of the species from a humanitarian issue and recognizing that not only has the hostile takeover of this country affected the native peoples, the humans, but that there's another species of man that's going undocumented, that's been reported thousands of times since the inception of America. And science and our officials and officialdom has done everything they can to make eyewitnesses sound incredible and to make the subject attached to a side of science that is preclusory. It eliminates the possibility of this being real by categorizing it as myth, legend, or folklore. When the reality is, there's American citizens seeing these things every month somewhere in the United States. And so we focused on aspects of this that are so blatantly obvious that the species is real and what it ultimately represents. And I think that in doing that, she's really started to gain some ground with support for this, and so that's where she's at in it. She sees, and from week one, she's seen. We were almost attacked the first week in 2015 when we started this study.
Well, big shout out to the wifey for holding you down and being in the game. I just wanted to know that. When I heard "we," I figured that's what it was. Let me interject and say this. I'm gonna circle back to the point you made about like disinformation. So, Mark, I started doing these short videos, right, and just posting like 15, 20 short videos a day, just to see how the YouTube algorithm would react. And something very profound came out of that. I'm sitting there reading the comments of these shorts, and when you read it closely, you realize that there are multiple accounts using the same comments, the exact same wording, the exact same phrasing on various different videos. So far, I've probably uploaded 150 short videos, and I'll see one account with this face, and it'll say, "Oh, that's fake," and it's a blurry creature, and all you guys are crazy. And then I'll see on the next video a different account, different picture, same comment. So I'm sitting there saying, "Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. This is a psychological operation that's actually being run on YouTube." I'm looking at it. I've done it before. I know how it works. It's literally a psychological operation being run through fake accounts on YouTube at the Bigfoot community, at the cryptid community. And I'm sitting, that was like 2 days ago. I'm sitting there looking and I said, hold on, who in their right mind has time to do this? And then when you really put the pieces of the puzzle together, we know who. And bro, when I tell you it's blatantly obvious, if you look, it makes absolutely no sense that they say the same thing. It's almost like somebody programmed this comment and sent it through these bots, and then wham, it just goes out on every video. Now you can go to another person's channel who does Bigfoot shorts, and you got to realize the shorts are where all the views are at on YouTube right now. You can go to another person's channel because all these videos get shared around anyway. Nobody really has anything original because unless you're in the field, you're not going to get anything original. I can go to somebody else's channel and watch their shorts, and it's going to be the same account over there saying the same damn thing. Bro, that's insane to me. That's literally and totally insane to me. So that adds credence to what you were saying. And then when you bring in the aspect of what your wife is attempting to do, that may be the missing key for me. I mean, you guys probably figured this out a long time ago. That may be the missing key for me as to why there's these behavior patterns in all these communities where when someone comes out with some really good solid evidence, it's immediately discredited. I mean, hands down, immediately discredited. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Does that sound like something you've seen before anywhere in the ballpark?
Yeah, I had um, I had an online involvement with the subject for about 10 years. And one of the things that I found fascinating about, let's just, take Facebook for social media, was that I could share something and and I would get, genuine responses, but then the attacks would inevitably come. And so I started to look into these people and everything that went on. And it just really does jive with interference. And you can see there's people that obviously have some type of derangement that they want to focus on other people's lives and try to ruin it. And there's always going to be that kind of sycophantic thing going on. But what we also witnessed were literally what could only be the employees of the company chiming in on things and bringing posts back that were deleted from accounts years before, saying you said this in so and so year, and you said this in so and so year. So when we witnessed that literally people had access to deleted information from our Facebook accounts in these groups, and that they were actively involved in making the subject more difficult to get any points or any truths across in a private setting, then we started to write about it. And so in the amount of research that we've done in this, I have to agree with what you say here. There's a very there's a concerted effort, an ongoing effort, and it's not just on that particular platform. And I don't, the algorithms, while millions of people find this subject interesting, somehow uh, they don't want to see one of these creatures, obviously, because we have videos showing the creatures, and in a capacity where if you spend an hour of your life looking at what we have, you'll walk away with it knowing what's real. Period. And yet we only get a few hundred views, 1,000 views, something like that. Our channel, when we first went public, was blowing through the roof. Within 2 weeks, we had surpassed what people had expectations on for a year's growth. And then all of a sudden, in one day, our channel flatlined, and we got an email from YouTube that said that our channel had been flagged for conspiratorial content, and that was the end of it.
Yeah, that's about par for the course, bro. Honestly, that's about par for the course. I experienced the same thing. I went on Coast to Coast AM, everything blew up, and then 2 weeks later, I was demonetized. And so I said, okay, the lesson I learned was, all right, this doesn't pay if you are dependent on completely and totally dependent on the platform. So then I fell
Yeah.
back, created my own platform, and then came back and said, okay, now it really doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because you created your own platform. That's a lesson to be learned. All right,
Well,
now,
that's what we did. That's what we did too. We left and we created our own platform and have been privately funded ever since.
and that's the smart thing to do, because
Yeah.
if you allow them, they will pull the rug from under your feet in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
and you'll be
Yeah.
sitting there
We picked
saying,
up on that. And I got to say that if it wasn't for, I got to say this, if it wasn't for the difficulties that YouTube presented us with, we probably wouldn't be where we're at in our study. So thank you for the harassment.
"No, man, that's how you learn in life. You got to go through some drama." All right, so let's fast forward to what you're doing now. You guys have your documentary out. Walk me through how you guys came up with the concept of doing this idea. What is the whole premise behind this documentary, and what came out of it so far?
Well, the premise behind the entire thing is is the marriage of Bigfoot Odyssey and crypto reality in its essence of what it does. And basically, Carrie has taken Bigfoot Odyssey and built it on the strength of the anecdotal side of this entire subject. Right? He's found the right people that have these situations going on, and then he's done a phenomenal job of building the interview process and being able to show that. Where we specialize is showing up in a place and determining what's going on, and then diagnosing it and documenting the creatures, finding and then documenting the creatures. And we've been doing that successfully for a while now. And it took a lot of work to get it to that point, just like where Carrie is. So when we started to talk about this, it was really something that early on probably would have happened were it not for the fears of some of the people that we initially encountered that we're talking about. Doing what essentially has been done by television shows for the last 15 years, with one exception: actually showing the evidence. And the interesting aspect of this is that when you show up in these places that these people are talking about on their property, there's action going on. After you've done your initial confirmations, you can tell real quick. And so we figured it was going to be a good fit, with Carrie's experience and his ability to get these reliable witnesses, and then my experience in the field with over 500 expeditions at this point, and the amount of stuff that we've learned, we're applying that, and that is what Crypto Odyssey is. The Impossible Show basically represents the investigation of where the Bigfoot Odyssey occurred. So where Carrie goes to interview, I'm in the bush, and then I'm working out where the creatures are based on what the eyewitnesses, the homeowners, are telling us, and then I go about my job of documentation of all the evidence. The show represents what we find.
No, and I like that concept and that idea. I've said this 1,000 times. When I first came into the paranormal field, and I've always dealt with real encounters, real witnesses, speaking to them. I got hit up by, I think, like 4 TV show producers, and they were like, "Well, we want to work with you, and we want to talk to some of your witnesses, and we want to give you a show." And so when the money hit the table, we started talking about money, and I started negotiating. Everything fell apart because I said, "Well, no," I said, "You don't have direct access to these people, even though you could, but you don't know how to go get it. So this is what I want," and everything absolutely fell apart. And what I found is that the community itself, like the YouTube community, the cryptic community, um, if we put together products and television shows and programs and documentaries like you guys have done, the budget's going to be a little bit smaller. It may not be as good, but over time, you will catch up to those quote unquote Hollywood people because you have the real, authentic encounters. It's not BS that's made up. And so I just,
Yeah.
when Carrie and I were talking about what you guys were doing and when it was first rolling out, I was like, bro, anything I can do to help promote, I want to help promote. I said, because this is right up the alley of what the community needs to do as a whole. And the community as a whole has to learn how to put aside stupid differences and understand that There's going to be people who rise all the way up to the top to do something and accomplish it, but when their boat lifts, everybody else's boat rises as well. But if you want to sink that
Yeah.
boat before it rises up, then you cause a major problem, and you set us back, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And it's hard to get people to understand that, but they're kind of slowly getting to that point as I talk to people behind the scenes. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
rambling. Let's get back to the documentary. All right, so where did this all take place? Walk me through where you guys went, or some of the locations you went to, and some of the things
Well,
about those locations.
okay. The first one is complementing the crypto reality Bigfoot Odyssey. So Carrie came to shoot the story, and that's where Melanie and I basically told him, certain aspects of what went on in the crypto reality story. Then we take him on expeditions to show him where these encounters happen, and we shoot footage and so on. But while Carrie was down here, we also, in two different trips down here, we undertook almost, I think it was 9 or 10 expeditions, and we had incredible stuff going on. What's in the Impossible film is episode 1 that's available for rent now is the full expedition, the creatures we caught on thermal. We literally were about 150 to 200 yards from the car, and had something in the middle of the forest set off the alarm on Carrie's truck. And you really got to move the truck to do that. We had things going on all around us. There's yells, screams, knocks. I mean, it's crazy. So you can see all of that, and as well as the creatures that we documented. Carrie managed to capture a few things on film. I managed to capture a few things on film. The thermals there. I think, based on what we're seeing, that we caught one of the individuals that I've had an eyeball to eyeball with, and because the thermal signature literally matches the drawing that I made 4 years ago of the individual. So it was a really great expedition, and it's expressed through that first episode of Impossible. It's Expedition Crypto Reality is what it's called. Now the second one, we shot in Central Florida, or a little further towards the Panhandle, and we're actually making a return to that area because we had some equipment malfunctions while we had creatures around us, and we couldn't get the footage out. So we're going to try to make a return trip on that, and then we'll put that film out after what initially was supposed to be the third expedition, which was Arkansas. Now that expedition went great. It was 2 homeowners who reported seeing multiple creatures on their property. In particular, when the wife would go swimming in the afternoons, there's a particular creature that keeps coming to the tree line, eyeballing her. And so we were excited to get up in this area. Obviously, scared and worried for the homeowners, but we went up there, and what we witnessed during that expedition was insane. I mean, trees being knocked down, yelling and screaming, claps, all kinds of audio sounds. I had knocks that were so close to me, that were so loud that they sounded like gunshots, just before I literally encountered one of the creatures on the side of the mountain and filmed it. So, like, the investigation was incredible. I had an encounter on that expedition, caught it on film. We've been sharing images on the Crypto Reality YouTube community tab, and that whole breakdown is going to be in episode 2 of Impossible, and that'll be on the website for rent as well.
There's something really crazy about Arkansas. Mountain Home, bull shows, those areas of Arkansas are insane when it comes to Bigfoot activity. When I worked as a engineer for energy, a part of my job was to design power lines in that area. And so we spent a significant amount of time in the woods staking and pre-working, pre-engineering with construction teams to build these power lines, bro. And when you're out in the middle of nowhere before they cut the right of way out, and you're down in a hollow, the things that you hear are
Yeah.
terrifying. I mean, it's terrifying. And if I wouldn't have been with, like, really seasoned construction engineers, I mean, these guys are seasoned. They're from Arkansas. I remember this one guy, I can't remember his name. He wore this big black cowboy hat. His hands are like two sizes, two of my hands. He had to be like 6'7". He looked like the freaking Undertaker, bro. Literally, the Undertaker, working in construction. And man, we hear this howling, barking scream in the bottom of this hollow. And I'm like, bro, we need to go. He said, no, James, no, 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 no. We're gonna stay here until it stops. I said, nah, bro, we need to get on these four wheelers and we need to go right now. No, no, no. Listen to me. If I and this is exact words, he said, listen to me. If I was in New Orleans and we was in a bad neighborhood and you gave me advice, I would listen, right? I said, you should. He said, okay, you in a bad neighborhood in the woods, and I'm gonna tell you, we gonna sit here until it stops. We ain't gonna run. We ain't gonna do nothing. Man, we were there for 40 minutes. That thing just going off. I'm like, bro, I'm not coming back. I don't care what you got to say. I don't want to hear. I got back all the way, Mark. Listen, I get back to New Orleans, go to the corporate office, and they're like, yeah, you got to go back up there next week. Hell no. Hell no, I'm not going. You can keep that. No, 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 sir. No, not doing it. Not doing it, bro. That was horrifically terrifying. Anyway, I say that to say Arkansas is wild, man. It really is
Yeah,
wild.
it was something else, man. There was a lot more activity on this piece of property than I expected. I mean, you could just see the damage was prolific. The manipulation of the forest was prolific. We saw things that I never seen before in sign. Like, this is the first time I ever saw anything like this. We saw. Have you ever seen the old movies where the Apache have that huge burial stand and there's a stand on top? It's like 10 feet off the ground.
Uh huh.
We saw one of those, and behind it was a smaller version of it. I mean, strange, made out of
So
huge trees.
what the
Like,
hell was that for then? You think that
I don't
was
know. It was in the forest on their property, and I'm like, what is this? And they're like, I don't know. We've never seen this before. And it was like, wow, we documented the whole thing, and it'll be in the episode. It's incredible stuff like that. Carrie recorded all kinds of howls and whoops and yells. The tree being pushed down was really something because the corroboration of the tree being pushed down was literally my sighting. We were over there looking for the tree, and I went up the hill further to see if I could find the tree when I saw the Bigfoot. You know, it's crazy, Arkansas. I can't wait to go back.
I'm gonna tell you, I really admire the fact that you guys are willing to do that. I'm not. I really, really do. And I think that it takes all kind of people to get us to where we're going. I admire the fact. I remember watching. I think you guys were in Florida, and Carrier was out there in the middle of the swamps. You could see he got all this bug spray on him. He got mosquitoes trying to bite him. He talking. I think he was talking to you, and then the lights went off, and I was like, "Yo, my man, they tripping. Y'all need to go inside. Y'all tripping. What is wrong with y'all?" And you can tell you are in the middle of no freaking where, bro. There's
Yeah,
not a when his light went off, there is not a drop of light to be detected. I'm like, nah, bro,
yeah.
that's not
That
gonna
was
work.
that when we were live.
Yep, that's when you guys
Yeah,
were live. I'm like, y'all crazy.
that's one of the scariest, and it's one of the most terrifying places on Earth when the sun goes down. In the daytime, it looks like nothing. Looks like it just doesn't seem like that kind of place where you would see these creatures. But then when the sun goes down and they're all running around and making the noises, and we had some crazy stuff going on, man. We had one during one of those live shows on Bigfoot Odyssey, and I think the show is up on the YouTube channel, whichever episode. It's from South Florida, from the swamp, I think it's called. We had a creature that was within 25 feet of us tear off through the bushes, screaming at the top of its lungs while we were live on YouTube.
See, and the problem with being in a situation like that, maybe you can explain to me. How do you not turn, tuck tail, and run? I guess it's pitch black. Where you gonna run to? You know what I'm saying? If you start running, it makes the situation worse. I don't understand how you guys do that, where you just remain calm and chill. Like, what's going on in your head when you hear that kind of? And this is a damn good question. Like, hold on, let me slow down and phrase this the right way. What? And I don't mean this offensively. What? Let me say it this way. What? No, don't say it that way. That could come out the wrong way. All right, let's say it just simply. What goes through your mind? Because I was gonna say, what in the hell is wrong with your head? What goes through your mind when you hear those screams and you know without a doubt, because I know you can feel it, that they're close to you? What goes through your mind? I mean, literally. What are you saying to yourself? What's that internal conversation? And then what are you saying to yourself to just keep your feet in place?
Well, there's not much. I mean, there's not much to justify it at all. First of all, at this point, because we've done the job. So when things like that happen, it's at this point it's kind of expected, and though it's unexpected when it happens, you're like, wow. But we're in this place that nothing but incredible things happen. And, I've seen the creatures here, and many people have. So, when the creature was running off, I took it as, something trying to get me to follow into that prairie. And there's no way I was going to follow into that prairie. 2 weeks before, they found a body there. And in the initial press release, the FWC officers that found the body said it was torn apart. And it was in the prairie that this creature was running into and running around in. So we were within probably 1,000 yards of where they found the body in the exact prairie that we were filming into. And so when he took off screaming, I was like, hey, no way, I'm following him. I'm not going to go in there. And the body was what I kept thinking. I kept thinking, okay, they've already found somebody here, and they've been either torn to pieces like the FWC said, or cut to pieces like the newspaper said. I just know that, with the history of the place, it is extremely difficult to stand still. It's extremely difficult. And you won't. There's no way you can. When stuff starts happening, you're moving, you're running, you're doing whatever you can. But, like, you had described earlier, once you're in this area, you're 3.5 miles in. So where are you running to? More woods? So there's really only one thing you can do, and that's get in the vehicle and leave promptly. And if we do that, we don't get what we need to move the needle forward. So it's a question of, weighing situations in real time to, try to get at least a little bit of a handle on safety issues. And then, it really is a react situation. And so you never know, in those situations, I have run and had several people with me running. I have been in those situations where we stood our ground, and, we're still here to talk about it.
Man, I'm gonna tell you, one smooth operator. I'm gonna circle back to something you said, because you said it so nonchalantly that to the audience listening, y'all might have missed what Mark actually said, because he said it so smooth. Like, the way he talks is so smooth, so direct. Y'all didn't hear what he said. They're going to investigate a place where a man was torn to shreds. And so he was out there in the night in the dark in the same area where a man was torn to shreds. Y'all missed that. I didn't miss it. Maybe some of y'all missed it. Maybe some of y'all heard it. But that's a whole nother level. With that in the back of your mind, as you're out there, and you just explained how you used it. You understood that, okay, it wants me to follow it, so it can basically probably tear me into shreds. But you see, this is what I respect about real researchers, like truly real researchers. Like, there's a lot of people who are, well, I call them Facebook researchers and armchair researchers, right? They never go out into the woods. Then there's people who go out into the woods and they'll do some research, and it's what's convenient for them. Then there's people like you guys who go into places that just 1+1 doesn't equal 2. You shouldn't go. You guys are 1+1 equals 5, and you still go, and then you hold your nuts while you're out there and do it anyway. I just want you to know I admire that. That's crazy and insane to me.
Well, it's funny because I grew up on the streets in a real rough neighborhood, and I can recognize a hustle when I see it. And it's just a hustle any way you slice it. He's trying to lead you. You know how that goes.
Right.
And I wasn't going for it. And, they do that a lot. And that's something that we have to deal with. And the fact that it was fresh, that it was only 2 weeks from when the body was found, when Carrie arrived and we were in there, it was fresh on both of our minds.
Bro, y'all, wow. Okay, so let's walk through some of the. You've been in the field. Let me throw some of the things at you, and you bounce them back off of me. These are things that I've gotten from the witnesses, and tell me if these things make sense. This is learning for me from an expert field researcher. So I've had a number of witnesses describe the process of being herded and moved from one location to the other, being surrounded, and it's a gradual, slow moving you back. 10 yards, 20 yards at a time, and then they'll leave you alone, and then 10 yards. When you try and change direction, know there's something there scaring you, and they realize over time that no, I'm being herded in a direction, and the only way they deal with it is they have to man up and say, you know what, I'm gonna have to go straight past you to get back to my truck. Have you experienced that? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, those are situations that my wife and I have endured for about 8 years, man. And when you're in those situations, like me, I have a tendency to say no. That's not what we're doing, and I stick to the exit plan. and we've had to walk past individuals, and I always say the same thing: just keep your eyes on the floor and walk straight down the trail and get past them. And you can tell when you're approaching the individuals, there's an immense presence in the forest on the sides of you, off the trail, immense, and it's completely and easily recognizable.
Hmm. And what do you think that hurting is? You think that's them hurting you off to eat you? Do you think it's what do you think that they're trying to achieve?
I think it's just instinctive with them. I think that that's how they deal with things as a group, and yeah, I don't feel comfortable with that. The least side of outcome on that is you end up like Albert Osterman, and I'm not signing up for that. So in the end, I'm not trying to get kidnapped and hang out with them for 3 days and, like, you know what I mean. I'm
Right,
just
right,
not.
right.
I don't want to be around them. This is very important because, I mean, we have different reasons. I look at the prospects of being grabbed by one of these creatures as a very serious likelihood. Should I uh, should I not maintain mutual respect? There are certain things that they have asked us to do by way of gesture, like you're saying, the corral and all this kind of stuff. I just won't do it. I won't do it under any circumstances. If I even sense that I'm being led, I get like panicked, man, and I'm like, I'm out of here, you know. And I have, like I said, I've let's see, I bought a 3D camera. I wanted to try to capture one of the creatures in 3 dimensional footage, and I went into this area, and when I was going in the normal entrance that I normally take, there were bolo, fences made out of small trees and saplings on both sides of the trail, so that I couldn't leave the trail. And it went around a couple corners, and I was contained. And I realized it. I realized I was contained, but I wanted to see what they were doing. And I continued walking forward. I came to a little clearing with about 6 cypress trees around it, and there was no leaf litter inside that circle. It had been completely cleaned off, and there was one green apple sitting right dead center, like in the bullseye. It was the only thing in it. Not a single leaf, not a twig, not a pine needle, nothing but this apple. And on the other side, about 15, 18 feet away, was these first couple cypress trees, and they're immense, And underneath it, I caught movement. And coming out from the roots, this creature unwound itself from the base of this cypress tree and smiled at me. And I shot it in 3D as my body was jumping to get out of there. So I ended up jumping that fence they made. So just, in that subject you just brought up, we've had many such experiences, and managed to capture a few of them, a good bit of them on film, where we've got these creatures, and you can make it out, man. This thing's right there, and in that situation you described.
Bro, that's freaking terrifying. So let me walk back through this with you because I want to make sure my mind is wrapping around this. This is a trail that humans use. This is not like a animal trail. This is a trail walking trail, or was it normally an animal trail where just a beaten path for animals, or was it something that you had been
No,
on
no,
before?
it's something we call the runway, and the runway leads you into this particular creek bed, which is their haunt. But at the end of the runway, there's a trail that goes into the creek. They had that trail completely engineered so that you could not leave it, and they turned it a different way and brought it through some different areas, and then it opened up into this other area. So they literally, from what we've seen, on this is not the only occasion, many occasions, will manipulate the environment, as you were discussing earlier, to manipulate the path that the game takes, we believe, so that they can ambush easier. you
Okay,
know
and I asked you a horrible question. I was going to rephrase the question, but you clarified it. So this was a game trail. I was looking for the right word. So this was a game trail. So they set up this elaborate trap for the game because I'm like, yo, they got an apple there. I guess if a
well, the,
character.
the thing about it is we don't really know, and this is what I want to be clear about. The reason we're there is we had been there for 4 years, and what we do is we do things I think differently than most people. Like I'd always heard about habituation and how people can get these creatures to come around, but I never saw any photographs that would convince me that that was possible. It is possible. We don't have a private property though. You know what I mean? So in the end, we had to find the creatures and interact with these creatures in the wilderness, in areas that are wild and not private. But we found out that they really like apples, and they will come to the same spot to get them, and that's how we get our data. We have been interacting with a few different groups in 3 or 4 different places for about 8 years now, and we use essentially Pavlovian style stimulus introduction to get them to come to the areas that we can photograph them, and we've been trying to do that and get better and better footage as we go along. So when I went in there and saw that apple, first thing I thought was, this is for a hog. This is a trap. I've been funneled in here, and this is a game trap. And then that was when the creature, came from underneath the tree, and I caught it as I was going on film. When I got home, I was offered a different possibility. Melanie said, "What if they were trying to give you an apple back? You've only brought them 1,000 pounds in the last, 3 years or something." And she's like, "What if?" And you said it was smiling, and it was. It wasn't an angry thing. This thing was smiling. Period. And so here we are again with the same question. We have more data this time, but are they going to get me, or did they want to interact? Is the question, and so we're trying to recreate that moment and see if we can again.
That is a tough question to answer, because the only way you get to the bottom of that is if you stay your behind right there next to that apple, and that is such a tall ask of anyone, bro. And the way you describe it, so it was it under the leaf litter, hiding in the leaf litter next to the roots of the trees, or it was just like in a
No.
hollowed oak? Describe that one more time.
Well, you got the cypress that comes down like this, but all this underneath it around the base is all hollow.
Right,
And
right.
they'll break 1 or 2 of these off and make an entrance and then go in underneath it. And this particular tree had 3 or 4 of them broke off. And there was a huge, and we're talking about 100-foot tree, man. I mean, this is a big cypress tree. So it's 7.5 feet around, 8 feet around. At the base, 10 feet, So you can, he obviously broke off a few of those big roots, the supporting roots, and he was under there because I saw that whole thing's back move, and it was wrapped around the base of the cypress tree, like almost like it was laying in the fetal position, hugging the tree, resting. And when I walked in, I was very quiet. I was by myself. That was one of the reasons I ran. Was when I saw the creature, it was only 15, 18 feet from me, and I was by myself, and it was broad daylight, and here was this apple, and I'm like, I got to go now. I mean, it was really a question of like, can I stop my body from doing what it's doing? And I couldn't at that point. It just wanted to go. So I went, I took off. But it was absolutely using the base of that cypress tree to hide, man. It was in there, So that's what I saw.
Would you say, now we're going to do something for entertainment value? What would you say was your worst, most horrific experience that you had? Was that it, or have you experienced something worse than that? I mean, scary, terrifying
No,
experience.
we've been in really bad situations where through, accident, we actually walked down into an area that, there was one of them in there, and it was shocking what happened because it allowed us to get right up on it. It was laying on the ground in some deadfall, and I'm talking about big dead trees piled up. First of all, hindsight, there was no explanation for how those trees got piled up the way they did. But at the time, I was a beginner, and I didn't really notice that the deadfall was orchestrated. It took 2 years after that before I even really looked at the deadfall and saw that, well, wait a minute. This is exactly the way it was. You know what I mean? So he was in there, and he growled 3 times at us. But the very first thing he did, and otherwise I would have thought it was a wild animal, except the first time he made any sound, he sounded like you just woke up your dad on a Sunday and he was hungover. He was
Right, like he was pissed.
oh, he went, oh, like, and I heard that and I thought, okay, there's a homeless person. And then this animal started growling at us, and it was going through us, man. And we were probably no more than 6 feet away. At times, it seemed like it was even closer. But it was pitch black, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. Melanie had a different response. Me, I went into fight or flight, and I wanted to leave. Melanie froze and seemed to be almost paralyzed, staring at where the sound was coming from with the perplexed look on her face. And it happened two more times. And I literally, for safety's sake, I had to jack her up out of there because she wouldn't move. So I like literally Lawrence Taylored her and just got her up the hill and got us out of there. And it was like, 45 minutes later, we came back across that exact point in the trail where we went down in there. And there were 3 giant rocks stacked out front. And he had, whoever it was, had taken the leaf spring off a burned out car that's out in those woods, off the bottom of it, and and it was sticking in the hole where the rocks came from, which I thought was really interesting because I was like, man, do these things, I mean, this thing has like a leaf spring. I was thinking, what if it chopped at you with that thing? You know what I mean? Because it's steel, and it looked rusty and it was huge, but it left 3 big rocks out in front. And when we walked up to it, man, my heart sank, man. I was like, oh boy. It was like, this is my address. Get away is the way I took it.
Making it very clear. Look, I live here. You need to go on about your business. All
Yeah,
right, we
that's the
almost.
way.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the way I took it. Yeah.
Now, this is my last question for you before we wrap this up. You guys, and I think this is a very profound question. Clearly, you've been in contact with these things. Clearly, you've documented them. You got to the point where you got the documentary. How far do you see yourself going, Mark? Because like you guys, anybody listening to you right now can tell there's not a lie coming out of your mouth. You know what you know. Your wife clearly knows. You and Kerry have a documentary with evidence. How far do you see you guys taking this, and when do you stop? I mean, what's going to be enough for you as an individual? Because when you set a goal for something, oftentimes when people go beyond that goal is when they get hurt horrifically bad. Have you guys put thought into that? What's the end point? What's the end goal? Where are you on, or where you at with that?
Yeah. I study, and so that's where my whole, passion is I like to learn. So there's really no end to that. And in that, I am who I am as far as, my pursuits. And it doesn't matter what I make my mind up to challenge myself with, I'm going to go down that road. And so I look at, what we're doing here as, I've, already explained, the humanitarian side of this is really important, but there are other sides of this that serve corporatism in the United States that really need to be looked at. And so I look at, the future as, what are we trying to do right now? I think until we really learn how to study these creatures from a definitive angle to where we've solved a couple of the equations that we're currently dealing with, and then I won't be satisfied. I need to reach the point where we're actively studying the creatures and we can watch the creatures. And so that's my goal, to get to that plateau. As far as where am I trying to take it? Like I said, I look at the future as like, I would really like to see official acknowledgement in the United States at the detriment of the companies that have been making money off of this for decades, and there are several. And when you look at what America ultimately represents and what it has represented from its inception, this has been about natural resources, man. The whole world fled here. And for us to think that, the largest corporations on the planet that are into natural resources haven't been here the whole time, we would be remiss. And so I want to take the fight to them if necessary. And looking at, how television programming is continuing to enable the denial of the acknowledgement of this species. There's so many sides to this that, activism in these subjects and in these avenues within the subject could really help to change. So I look at it like, man, we have a lot of work to do.
I'll give you a piece of advice from someone who's set with congressmen and senators, and the only way you're going to make that change is you're going to have to take some of those guys and you're going to have to bring them out into the woods, and you're going to have to put them in a situation where they're going to experience and encounter it. Unfortunately, with men of power, you can talk to them until your face turns blue. Sometimes you have to literally pull them out of, and I've done this some before, pull them out of their environment. Say, okay, you don't realize how bad it is, and I'm talking about this neighborhood. Come on, we're gonna take a ride. We're gonna go to dinner. Take them to dinner, limousine, everything. Have broad in there, got them getting drinking. Then we just pull up in the project and get out. And I start speaking to people. Man, where are we? What's going on? No, no, no. I need you to see what's going on. Come take a walk with me. And I say, you're going to get
Yeah.
all the street credibility there is, but take a walk. And he like, man, they got crack. Yes, that's a crackhead over there. So you're literally going to have to
Yeah.
grab you one of them and bring him out there. Now, there's that guy in Oklahoma. I think he was doing his thing as a kind of as a publicity stunt, but I've already reached out to him and spoke with him. And he said he would go out into the field with somebody. So next time I talk to him, I'm going to try and plug you two guys up just for shits and giggles so you can scare the pants off of him, because I think that'll be funny, man. I think that'll be
Hey,
real, real funny.
yeah, man. I agree with you on that. I think nothing serves the understanding like the experience itself, and I've seen it firsthand many times with people who have connected with us and eventually got to go in the field with us and see what it is exactly that we are experiencing. So
All right, Mark, we're running out of time here. Let's do this. Walk everybody through how they get in contact with you, the cost of this documentary, when the next phase of it's rolling out, where they need to go to watch it. By the way, tell your wife I say hello, Melanie. And she's in my book.
I will.
She's a cryptid OG, for she's out there in them streets for real with Bigfoot and probably other things. Walk them through everything so they'll know where to go.
No problem. Our research site is on Patreon with Crypto Reality. So that's Crypto Reality Patreon. So you would go to the Patreon site and it's Reality One. So Patreon Reality One will take you to the Crypto Reality Bigfoot research site. It's $1.99 a month, and you directly support the research that we share with you on that site. We also have a YouTube channel. That's Crypto Reality YouTube. I think there's cryptocurrencies trying to chime in on that name or whatever, but at this point, you'll know which one's which. We have the bright sun. It's that bright sun on our logo. You're always going to see that. And then we have Crypto Odyssey, and that's the new project. Now, the new project, we have a new website. It's cryptoodyssey.elementor.cloud. We're waiting on our domain name. We should have that in a few weeks, but temporarily, it's cryptoodyssey.elementor.cloud, and you can actually access the rental film from there, which is for rent on Vimeo. It's $3.29 to rent the film. You get it for 72 hours, and it shows everything we talked about. In addition to covering the theories that Crypto Reality has worked by connecting the existence of Sasquatch to existing science on light and diffusion and achromatic coloration. So there's a lot of our work is over the last 8 years is included in that first episode of Impossible. It's designed to help you to understand what you're going to be seeing for the rest of the series.
Gotcha. Listen, I appreciate you hanging out with me. Like I tell Kerry all the time, this field is a field where, unfortunately, people don't communicate the way they need to. And when it comes to me, it takes a little bit of courage to come hang out with me, because I can be a bit of a lightning rod. So I appreciate you trusting me and coming hanging out and spend some time with me, man. Again, tell your wife I said hello, and I appreciate you, man. Have a good evening.
I will. You too.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Take it easy.